Hi and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about how you can grow a lush and full Oxalis Triangularis like this one. This has been one of my sort of success stories of the summer. I absolutely love this plant and it's done so well for me, and it continues just to thrive and just be one of like the most asked sort of houseplants in my collection. So I thought I would do a pretty brief video today just talking about how I look after mine and some tips if yours is struggling. But before we get into the video, hi, my name's Alexis and this is Wild Houseplants. I'm a houseplant enthusiast and I also work as a houseplant technician, which basically means when I'm not looking after my own plants, I'm looking after other people's. If you don't follow me over on Instagram and TikTok, you can find me there at Wild Houseplants. And if you do enjoy this video today, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button below because it really does help out my channel. Okay, let's talk about this beautiful Oxalis Triangularis. Okay, so I've had this plant for about a year, I think. I'm gonna check exactly when I bought it and I'll put it on a screen along with the picture. But I actually bought two plants, and that would be my first tip for anybody, is if you're buying it from plants rather than growing it from corms, then when you're buying the plant, buy two or maybe even three. Basically these plants are not super expensive. You can probably pick up like a small pot for around £8-9 or something like that. So if you were to buy two, you're just going to be giving yourself that like extra step into getting a full plant much quicker. So that was the first thing that I would say, is buy two plants and then let them acclimate in your home for a little bit, pop them in a bright spot just as two separate plants. And then once you feel that they've acclimated to your home, normally for me that would be around about 3 weeks to a month, I then remove them from the pot and I potted them back both up together using a soil blend of cocoa coir, perlite and orchid bark. I used quite a lot of the cocoa coir because basically you want that moisture retentive ingredient in there, because as we'll come to it in a minute, these plants need a lot of light. So you want something that's going to keep the moisture in there. But you also, because you're going to be watering it quite frequently due to the amount of light that this plant requires, and they tend to come in a really dense mix. You want to sort of get rid of that dense mix and add some more aeration in there as well with the perlite and the bark. The bark will also help with moisture retentiveness as well, but it will make it a bit airier and chunkier for the roots. So that the first thing would be buy more than one plant. The second thing would be, once you've acclimated them in your home, to repot them together using a more sort of chunky aerated mix, but using enough of that moisture retentive cocoa coir just to like keep the plant happy and keep it not getting from drying out too quickly. So once you have done that, I have repotted this plant once again since then. And the thing with this is I can feel it now again, is when you feel the pot, you'll start to feel the plant pushing against the side of the pot, and you can feel those corms in there, and you can see that like the plant is like sort of almost starting to sort of break out the pot a little bit. But I'm hoping now, because it's September, I don't really want to be repotting this again before the winter. So I'm hoping this plant can hold out in here now until the spring. So yeah. So the next thing that this plant needs is a lot of light. Like, you cannot give this plant like too much light. You can even see these growing outside. You might see them in like borders and stuff growing outside. They won't last the winter outside, they would die off, but that's why they make fantastic houseplants, but they do need a lot of light. Mine sits in my south-facing window and receives a lot of direct sun, and that is absolutely fine for these plants. Despite their leaves being really, really super thin and almost papery, they can handle a lot of sun and they need that sun. So you cannot give it too much light. Don't even worry about it receiving too much direct sun either, because mine receives a lot and it's absolutely fine. So lots and lots of light. Now, what happens when you give a plant a lot of light is it's going to dry out quickly. So mine does dry out, probably I water it every 3 or 4 days. So it's probably one of my more sort of, I don't want to say dramatic plants, because I know exactly what it wants. It tells me what it wants. What it will do is, in the day, if I notice it's starting to wilt, that's a clear sign this plant's saying, I'm thirsty, I'm ready for a drink. Brilliant. I love it when plants really clearly tell you what they want, and this plant is great for it. At night, they do naturally close up on themselves. So if you notice your plant doing that at night, don't worry about that. It's not the plant saying it's thirsty. That's just what they do at night, because there are lots of plants like prayer plants, for example, that obviously move depending on the light of the day. And this plant does that as well. So when the sun comes out in the morning, you'll see it like can become much more flatter. And then when at night, it will just slightly close up a little bit like that. So don't worry if it does that at night. But if you notice it wilting a little bit in the daytime, then that's when you want to water it. And I like to take mine out of its decorative pot, take it to the sink. I fertilise this plant with every water because it's always growing. And so any plant that's actively growing, I fertilise all year round. If this plant was to start to like decline over winter, maybe start to go dormant, and I didn't think it was putting out much new growth, then I would cut back on the fertilising or maybe stop it altogether. But I let the plant let me know whether or not it wants to be fertilised by whether it's actually actively putting out new growth. If it is pushing out new leaves, then I'm going to continue to fertilise it because it's going to be hungry, because it's going to be using energy up putting out those new leaves. So yeah, I take this over to the sink. I mix up my watering can with some fertiliser in there, and I thoroughly drench it until there's lots and lots of water coming out the bottom of the pot. And then I sort of tip it from side to side like this, and then pop it back in its decorative pot. And they're the kind of plant that like pop back up a bit like a peace lily. You know, peace lily is very dramatic, goes like when it's thirsty, and then you give it a drink and within an hour it's like perked back up again. And this plant is exactly the same. It perks back up really, really quickly. That being said, if your plant is struggling with root issues, or maybe even the corms are rotting, it might look like withered and wilting as well. So if you notice the plant is wilting, but when you put your finger in the soil, it's really damp, then that's probably more showing that your plant is suffering with some kind of root problem, as opposed to it being thirsty. So just because the plant is wilting, if the soil is wet, it's definitely not thirsty. You don't want to be giving it any more. You want to be letting that soil dry out. And that's why I like to repot my plants and put it into a slightly more aerated mix. And then I know quite clearly that then they're not going to be suffering with sort of being in that damp, moisture retentive, sort of claggy soil that's not really going to do anything for the plant. So when I've seen them go downhill at clients' house, it's normally because they've been, you know, when that person bought the plant, they got in a really dense, like very moisture retentive mix, and they've probably overwatered it at some point, or that mixture just isn't drying out quickly enough for the roots, or it's in that very damp, moisture retentive soil and it's not in a bright spot, so it's not even getting the light requirements that it needs. So yeah, that's why light and soil are so important. And then after that, you basically just let it get on with it, and you just like water it quite frequently, like I say, when the plant's asking for it, and then you let it get on with it. And mine has just like, yeah, grown and grown and grown, and gone from being like 2 relatively small plants to being this much bigger plant that you see today. So yeah, they also produce like, well, there are a few different sort of varieties even within the purple. So I've seen ones that have got like almost like a purple, like a central border that's got like another color of purple in there, and they might have like white flowers. This one is all one color, and it produces these light sort of lilac colored flowers. Now the flowers can be a bit annoying in that they do tend to drop off and leave a bit of a mess on the floor. It's a bit like if you have a lot of Hoya, you just sort of get used to the idea that you're going to have, you know, little flowers everywhere. And once the flowers have all like finished flowering on one of the stems, like this one hasn't quite finished, I just pick it off like that. Obviously there is still one flower on here, but just as an example, these are all when the flowers are spent and they've already dropped off, and I'll just pull it out like that and get rid of it. And similarly with the older leaves, so once they start to droop a little bit and sort of look like this, then I will just pull them off. And probably like once a week, I'll just like go round, have a look to see if there are any leaves that are looking a bit sad and are ready to come off, and just pick them out as and when. But honestly, like, I think once you get the watering and light requirements that this plant wants, it's actually really easy, and it's not one that keeps you guessing. And yeah, I just found it such a rewarding plant, and one that definitely like always sparks people's interest when they come into the house, or even in like when I'm filming like reels and stuff, people always go, what is that plant, or how do you keep yours so happy, and that sort of thing. So yeah, just a wonderful plant that's been really rewarding for me this year. So yeah, just a quick video today. I hope you find these tips useful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.